The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame.
Welcome back to The Short Game. This is a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I am Reagan Kelly, and I am joined this week by my full complement of co-hosts.
Nate Heininger.
Laura Nash.
And Shane Kelly. And this week we are doing another sort of grab-baggy type of episode, but this time with a theme. We are talking about, well, we've been talking for a while about covering homebrew games for classic consoles. And we talked about whether we were going to do, NES or Genesis or Game Boy. And there's a big scene for homebrew on all of those platforms. When we started looking at the Game Boy in particular, there's a ton of good Game Boy homebrew and a lot of very interesting stuff. So in order to kind of narrow things down and focus a little bit, I got very intrigued by something called GB Studio, which is a tool for creating Game Boy homebrew games. And we'll talk a little bit about it in a minute. But today we are just going to be talking about, we tried a few games for the Game Boy that were specifically created using GB Studio. And we're going to talk about some of the stuff that we've played.
And we've done some homebrew games before, at least one, right? Mini Mages for NES?
Yes, I think that may be the only one that we've done, which is a bit of a shame because I always really enjoy homebrew. I think it's really interesting. And sometimes those games are really short.
Yeah.
But it's also like, for some reason, I think homebrew games can feel a little inaccessible to like, your average Joe gamer on the street because they require, first of all, knowing that homebrew is a thing.
That's the big one. That's the big barrier. Yeah. At least that was the big barrier to me. Mini Mage opened that to me.
Oh, yeah.
And with Game Boy, I mean, obviously, I did not play these on a real Game Boy because I'm not sure that I own something that can play these games except for emulating them on the computer. But we're talking about a console that came out in I think I was 4 years old when the Game Boy came out. This was 1989. So
I think when we covered random Game Boy games, and I talked about Ninja Turtles, I spoke of the inherited Game Boy from my brother that had a bunch of duct tape over the battery pack. Yeah. And if you got too excited, the batteries would pop out and you lose all your progress. So big upgrade playing in a browser or an emulator. For me, I don't have a fancy analog pocket, but I did send this to everybody who has one and say, hi, did you know there's homebrew?
Yeah, that's great. I still have my Game Boy somewhere around here. It also doesn't have the battery pack cover. I guess that was just, if you can lose something on it, I probably did.
Classic Game Boy, man. No battery cover. That's the way that they all were.
The longevity of the Game Boy is really surprising. I mean, it's huge in the cultural memory. I think people that were born long after it came out still all know what it is on site. But even back in the day, like when I got my first Game Boy, it was on the release of Pokemon Red and Blue. And that was like 1996.
The Game Boy was already really old at that point.
Yeah, the Game Boy was already super old. And it was still getting like platform defining titles. So it's kind of not surprising that people are keeping the flame burning for the Game Boy. But what really surprised me is how cool the tools are and just how diverse the like homebrew catalog is. Like the quality of the products here are I mean, it's as if people have been refining their skills since 1989.
Yeah, you would really think that, like, if you think about Game Boy homebrew, you expect that it's just going to be a bunch of people making their Mario, right? But it's not. There's a really big variety to the stuff here, even for things that come through this very specific development tool pipeline that, you would think would give things a bit of sameness. And there is a little bit of that, but there's still a lot of diversity here.
Now, unlike the rest of us, if Reagan just slightly tilts his camera a little to the right, we'll see 25 to 30 pristine Game Boys lining his. He's got it in his hands right
it's
now.
literally in his hand.
Hey Reagan, I had that same one. Is that a?
Oh yeah, the green pocket.
The green
this is
pocket.
the best one, man.
Yeah, I had one.
Reagan,
green Game Boy Pocket.
where's the blue one that you had growing up?
No, I had there was no blue Game Boy Pocket as far as I know.
You fool.
No, I thought I had a red. I got the red one for with Pokemon Red, and I thought you got a blue one with Pokemon Blue.
I got a green one with Pokemon Blue.
Wow.
Right.
So I had that,
Laura,
I had that contrast.
we should go, Laura.
Because I had Pokemon Red, and I remember you being really mad that I could only trade
Okay, I'm
with
just
Reagan.
gonna leave, I guess.
Yeah. No, I definitely remember I had the green one because I wanted to. Well, I didn't think about this when I was receiving it as a gift, but it was color matched with the best starter Pokemon, the Bulbasaur.
Wow.
Who is the best boy?
Shots fired.
So,
Wait.
yeah.
Oh, I guess green for Bulbasaur. I was like, but Pokemon Blue is
absolutely.
Squirtle, but Shane had blue hair, so this is all very confusing.
That was.
I'm just gonna go.
That was an embarrassing time in our lives.
I'm not embarrassed to have had a blue hair phase.
I think you peaked.
Laura has the receipts on all of our embarrassing childhood memories, and we all appreciate that she keeps them quiet.
Reagan and my childhood was tied together with a link cable. Let's put it that way.
There's mutually assured destruction there, so I can't really speak out of turn.
So, yes, we all had Game Boys, I think, and all of us had slightly different experiences with them. We don't need to spend a ton of time on that. Everybody had a Game Boy. Everybody remembers roughly the same amount of stuff about the Game Boy. You played games on it. You shone a light on it late at night so you could play it under the covers or whatever, all that stuff. But I've actually been really interested in Game Boy Homebrew for a little while. I've played a handful of things that have kind of hit the various sort of retro game enthusiast blogs I've seen. So I had heard a little bit about GB Studio, but it was only pretty recently that I played any games that were specifically made using it. And also I took a little bit of time to download the tool and just poke around in it. And so just to start by kind of talking about what is GB Studio, GB Studio is a free and open source game development tool for Game Boy homebrew games. And you can create games for the original Game Boy Color, Super Game Boy, for the SNES, and also games that play directly on the analog pocket. It has sort of a special export format specifically for that. In addition to, it has an export format for playing games on the web. So this is actually a pretty interesting feature of it, is that it's designed not just for you to be able to export a ROM that people can play on their old Game Boy or in a Game Boy emulator on a PC, but you can also upload your games to places like itch.io and have a one-click play way to create a nice, simple game that people can play on the web. Really interesting tool. And moreover, it is it's a visual game. They call it a visual game builder with no programming knowledge required. So I downloaded this and poked around in a little bit by opening some sample projects, and it's really impressive how committed this thing is to being a code-free development environment. It is, you create little visual tiles for things like scenes, and you tie them together with little lines. You can set scripting on objects in the scenes, but the scripting is mostly done via little pickers and little drag and drop interface. It is very committed to being very little typing involved, essentially no coding knowledge required. That's not to say it's simple. It's definitely something where you'd need to dedicate yourself to learning how it works, but it is all built into this thing, including everything from being able to, create the game, create the backgrounds, create the music. It has a music tracker built in that actually was one of the most interesting parts of it. It's got a very neat little sort of piano roll style interface for building Game Boy music. And then it's got a kind of a build and run thing where you can click and play your game directly in it. And I think it's really, really impressive.
The thing that blows my mind here is that there is absolutely someone out there who's 16 years old and has made their very first video game for the Game Boy.
Yes.
I know, right?
Right, yeah.
And that's 100% possible here. This is something where if you've got this app and a copy of something like Photoshop or something where you can create graphics that you can export as a PNG, because that is something you probably need to do separately. But basically those two things, and you can make a game here. And it's really one of the things that made me think about that I think is really interesting is like, you see a lot of games with tools like Pico 8, where it's really focused on online sharing, uploading games to the web. This is ideal as one of those sort of like things where you want to create a simple game to share on the web. Because not only does everybody have access to a web browser and you can play there, but like Game Boy ROMs are tiny and there's a zillion ways to play them. And it makes it extremely easy to share these works. I think it's a really clever approach.
A super great way, if you are doing this as like a coding example or like a game design sample, like being able to showcase your work on a Game Boy seems like a really good way to do it, because you can bring it with you anywhere. And then you can just hand it to someone. And as we have already established, everyone loves the Game Boy. So,
oh, yeah. And there's just that cool factor of like, hey, these things run on an actual Game Boy. GB Studio's been around for a little while. It's on its sort of third major version, GB Studio 3. Some of the games that we're playing today were created with earlier versions. They've added a number of different abilities to create new types of games. So because this thing is so very drag and drop, and it's sort of functioning both as an IDE and also a game engine, they kind of have to like build in support for specific game styles. So you can't like go completely off the rails. I'm sure there's ways to get creative with it, but you can't go completely off the rails and create things that the tool never envisioned. It's really designed around, you can create games in certain modes, and your games can combine scenes from multiple modes. So you've got sort of a platformer mode, a top-down JRPG type of looking mode, a mode that's sort of based around like shoot 'em up, either the flying around shooting kind of mode, and a more sort of point and click mode, as well as just sort of basics like showing full screen graphics and stuff like that. And it really is just as easy as dragging and dropping elements into scenes. Selecting variables for them and so on. It's really, really impressive. You can download GB Studio if you go to gbstudio.dev, or you can download it on GitHub. And because it's open source, it's something where people are contributing to this tool. It's got a community around it on Discord. I don't know. I only spent an hour or so sort of playing around with the tool and reading through the documentation, but I can't say how it's so impressive. It's such an impressive tool. And so I really hope sort of, people who are maybe making their first game, or who maybe know a little bit of game design in other modes, but don't want to learn, assembly language in order to put something on the Game Boy. This gives you a way in without needing to learn that, like the incredibly complicated stuff that you would typically need to know in order to create a game for a retro console.
So the first game that I picked to play really blew me away. I absolutely loved this, and I feel like I've got a lot to say about this game, even though it is extremely short. I think this game...
Well, that's the entire premise of our show, is it? Is it not?
It is. Which, I mean, hey, that is exactly why I love it. That is one of the reasons why I love this game. This is a perfect short game. This is something. It's so short that it literally could never have had a cartridge release on the Game Boy, because someone would have to like carry around a physical cartridge. This thing is 512K, which is I don't really know how big Game Boy games typically are. But this game has just a ton of A+ full screen art in it, which is not common for Game Boy games. So the game is called Possum Country, and it's by someone named BenJelter. And
he's an illustrator, I think.
Yes, BenJelter is a illustrator, and I went ahead and looked up his website. He's got a really good, like, clean illustration style, and he's done multiple like graphic novels, one that you can read free online called Heliosphere. I've just read the first 2 pages. It looks really cool. So mainly this guy is an illustrator. I'm going to take a quick look. I think he has one other he has 2 other people credited on this game. Someone named Dana Jennings, who assisted him with the story and dialogue, and a third person who did the music named Lunches. Thank you, Lunches. Big fan of your work. And the cool thing about this is like at first you fire it up and it seems like it is going to be a like an RPG maybe. The story starts with a food delivery driver kind of pulling up to a trailer park, and I don't know really how. I'm gonna try and cover this spoiler free at first, but to really get into why I like this game, I am gonna, and it's also so short. I'm gonna have to talk a little bit about what happens in it. So at some point, I might say, okay, go ahead and skip forward. But the first thing I'll say about the setting is, the car pulls up, and it's the whole screen is basically just the car and various different trailers. Now, a real Game Boy game would have had one trailer. Every trailer lovingly rendered here. And the delivery driver is trying to find the person to deliver the food to, right? So you go from trailer to trailer, and you encounter various terrifying members of the rural poor. And this,
Okay.
So this is stylistically, let me tell you a little bit about what this game I think is going for. It is a real combination of maybe like the Twilight Zone with like maybe a little bit of an X-Files vibe. It feels like the kind of thing that you would have seen, on TV in the 90s, right? Which has it fits with the Game Boy vibes. And in one of the trailers that you go to first, you knock and you see a kind of a long-haired, kind of vacant-eyed girl who doesn't speak, right? And then you leave, and then you're basically go to each of the different trailers, and some man or woman there tells you, no, it's not my food. What happens as you get a little bit more into it is, once you've talked to everybody, you keep hearing about someone named Bill, and you go back to the very first trailer, which is the one where you saw the girl, and then you meet Bill, and Bill says, "Oh, there was no girl here." I forget who you even actually give the food to, but of course, in true horror movie tropes, you get back to your car and it has been disabled. So,
and there's a big claw hook right in the
right. Hanging
right.
from the doorknob was a claw. No.
So a few great moments that I can say before I say, like, jump ahead spoiler territory here. One of the trailers has a woman in it who is the one who's like the most open and helpful with you. And she sends you on one of the little RPG type quests that you have in this, which is, you have to bring her some water from the well. And so, of course, you have to get a old bottle to get the water, and then you bring her the water. And this is a good example of how awesome the art is for a Game Boy game. All of these characters, by the way, are full screen illustrations. So they're low resolution. It's a Game Boy game, but they're rendered as big as you can get, right? And so you bring her the water, and she says, thanks. And then you see the water poured into a cup, and then she takes out her teeth and puts them in the cup. And then now she's gotten much crazier looking because she's got this gigantic toothless grin, which is just it's a great moment in kind of the escalation of the craziness of this. And by the way, all throughout, as you're walking around, kind of in the walking around view, everything's pretty small. The guy's maybe 5 or 6 pixels high. There are like these 3 or 4 pixel, very recognizable possums that are just kind of everywhere. Now go ahead and hit that 30-second skip button.
I'll be putting chapters in the episode, so
Sure.
If folks really want to skip past, look for the chapter feature in your podcast player and skip to the next one if you don't want spoilers.
So Bill, it becomes fairly clear pretty quickly based on even a cursory level read of the context clues of literally anything any of these creepy people has to say that, you know, Bill is the important one here, and they're all getting ready to undergo the change. And there's, you know, and Bill has a great way of helping us leave behind our mortal flesh. And so the way the story unfolds is you finally pretty much right away as soon as things start going to shit. So the delivery driver sees the girl again, and now she's eating out of a dumpster. And he like ushers her back. You usher her back to your car and tell her sit in the car. And this is when you find out that the car has been disabled. He's like, oh well, now I've got to go and get something to fix the car. He bring her back. You'll never have to eat out of a dumpster ever again. You know, it's this. He doesn't care about. By the way, I don't know if this is commentary or this is just stylistic, or if this is maybe just me commenting on the game. But this delivery driver doesn't care about the situation of any of these trailer park nobodies, except for the one that's the pretty girl.
Oh, sure.
But,
naturally.
Yeah, this is definitely an example of kind of the... I mean, this is, like I said, 90s. The horror meets rural poor, like that Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I was just going to say, that sounds like Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah, that's exactly
Misery vibes.
Hard. Yeah, absolutely. So then the in quick succession, when things start to go to shit, you know, the puzzles stop being like find a bottle and fill it with water, and they start being like get a chainsaw, get a shotgun, right? So it gives you a chainsaw and a shotgun right away. And then you are going to have to go back into the woods. There's like an area up at the top of the map where there's a very weirdly tall guy. And like the sprite for this guy is like twice the height of any other person's sprite. And when you see him in the like, they go from sprites sometimes to a what do you call it, portrait illustration, and the portrait illustration for him is just looming over you, looking down at you like sideways in a way that's very creepy. And you know, you have to get through there, blast the lock off of this gate, use a chainsaw to cut through, and now you're in the forest where possums are trying to attack and kill you, and you have to use the shotgun to defend yourself.
And there we have a title.
And then you get back to this old abandoned radio station where you very quickly find a bunch of journals, Bill's journals, where he talks about all the people in town and what... so these are all people who have been like cast out of society. And you kind of got that from some of the things that they've said. They're all societal outcasts. And in each of the little journal entries, he's identifying each one of them and why they're kind of a outcast from society, and their level of compatibility with the process or the change. And then you see the tall guy again who's looking for his brother, and you're checking everything. And then you check the back room, and there's just a truly horrifying illustration of... like empty skin hung up on meat hooks. Right?
Oh, dear.
Classic Game Boy imagery.
Yeah, you tell the guy, listen, we're going to get out of here right now. You and the tall guy leg it, and you're making your way back.
Wait. Are you saying that you and the tall guy leg it, or is the tall guy named Leggett?
No,
okay.
You and the tall guy are running.
Thank you.
Right.
You and the tall guy,
don't look back there. I'm sorry about your brother. He's not coming back. We're getting out of here now. And on the way back, on the road back to the trailer park, you encounter the girl again. By the way, she was in the car. I forgot to mention, like, she disappears from the car. So you see her, and her like head is like split open, and there's like a possum coming out of her, like she's
okay.
And it's the most gruesome, like creepy illustration. This is like that's the thing about the art in this game, is it's like very successfully gruesome and creepy in a way I didn't really even think was possible at this resolution. And so then you shoot her because you have to. And then Bill is cradling this possum and he says, why? Basically he gives a speech. I wish I had written it down, but it was like, why do you city people always destroy what you don't understand? The end.
Well, hey, I live in the city, the big city, and there's a possum in my backyard all the time. Mm-hmm. And I guess I'm never going out there again. You've convinced me.
I would advise you not to. And this, I could not tell where this fits into the current possum discourse. I don't know how much you all have followed the internet's
love of possums.
Perverse love affair with possums.
Yeah.
So possums, ages past, were primarily considered pests. And I think that is because they are gross. And
wow. Okay.
I've had long discussions.
Coming for possums.
Yeah. Okay.
I am coming for possums right now. I've had long discussions with friend of the show Mark Bramhill about the merits or demerits of possums. So shout out to Mark, who's a real possum lover.
I know him more as a bird guy, so I'm not sure if I can.
He sent me.
Trust.
He sent me a lot of possum pictures at one point, and I was not persuaded. So I don't mind them. I'm not like I wasn't afraid of them until I played this game. But the thing that you always hear about possums from the real possum lovers is the idea that they are like nature's like tick eradicator mainly. Like they're immune to Lyme disease, and they eat 5,000 ticks a year, and they are immune to rabies, et cetera, right? I don't know how many of you guys have heard these things.
I've heard these things.
Maybe
I don't know.
Listeners have probably.
It sounds like that was written by a possum.
I agree.
Big possum paid for that ad.
I would encourage our listeners to Snopes those facts. Because it was recently many pro possum rumors have recently been discredited by science. So feel how you like about possums. You might like them. You might be afraid of them. You might want to massage them.
What?
Such as. Have you ever seen the possum massage lady? Reagan, you know.
There's a lot.
I do. I have seen the possum massage lady.
There's a lot
I do know that
going on.
first image.
YouTube.
Thank you.
There's a whole YouTube channel. I used to
her channel, I think, is called Me Pearl, or something like that. And she is a possum rescuer, and she goes on YouTube to teach people how to properly massage possums, which I think is delightful. It's a great YouTube video if you want to check it out.
Well, this is a big possum. It's eaten at least 5,000 ticks. It comes and sits on our fence posts, and we'll all be hanging out there, and it's there just hanging out sometimes, and it's kind of terrifying with its rat tail, but I don't know.
Sounds like he's just looking for a little rub down.
I have a disturbing possum story.
Uh-oh.
I think we should all share our most disturbing possum stories now.
My sister has a lovely rescue vet named Lucy who protected the backyard from a possum by grabbing the possum, and the possum played dead. And Lucy proceeded to run all over the backyard.
This is why it's called playing possum.
Right. That's what possums do.
Classic
and so
possum
she grabbed
move.
the possum, ran around the entire yard with the possum, and then Kelly was like, put that thing down. Lucy did. The possum ran off. Well, it turned out the possum was carrying babies. And so there are just little tiny babies strewn all over the backyard who were abandoned by their mother. And then Kelly had to, the little possum babies died because they were abandoned. And Kelly had to then take just dig that out of the backyard for a week, and she was very.
Gotta say, I hate this story, Laura.
That is slightly more horrifying than my possum story.
Should we cut that from the podcast?
No,
Should we not
absolutely
inflict
not.
that on our listeners?
I want to stick on that because that is, I think there's the silver lining there, which is the one like this is
which is that many possums died.
Thank you. No, the silver lining really is just in reminding ourselves of the one good trait that possums have, which is that they are North America's only marsupial. So you should always watch out for the babies
Yes.
that they carry with them. But
They're about the size of honeybees, and they apparently are terrible to clean out of your grass.
okay, just mow.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Shane, you're going to hell.
This show is canceled. Shane, please pack your.
You can
Mark
cut that.
Mark is leaving the Discord. Mark is never going to talk to you
Sorry,
again.
Mark. Sorry, Mark.
Shane,
I
go
don't
ahead.
hate possums. I just don't believe the lies. So my possum story is a story of true gaslighting. My childhood home, I was constantly hearing something in the walls, and I would be trying to go to sleep, and I would hear things moving in the walls, and I would tell my parents, and they would not believe me. And it happened for a long time until there was some plumbing trouble in my grandmother's bathroom, and they cut a hole, and that hole just kind of no one was urgently fixing the hole in my grandmother's wall. It was about the size of a deck of cards just to access a pipe. Now, weeks go by. I continue to complain about the nighttime noises there's scratching right next to me. Out from that hole, I hear a shriek from my grandmother's area of the house, from her bathroom, and it is because a possum has stuck its head out that hole and is just sitting there and cannot be convinced to withdraw. People yelling, waving things at it. Nothing was convincing. It wasn't moving forward. I don't know if the hole was even big enough, but it was big enough for it to stick its head out right above the commode. And literally scare the shit out of my grandmother. And so I was then asked to like scare it away, because I think at the time it was like you and me and our grandmother, and our grandmother's caretaker Bessie was home, and neither of them was successful at scaring this thing off. And so I ultimately got an umbrella, and I just like I tried a bunch of different things. The only thing that actually scared the possum away was opening and closing the umbrella rapidly nearby. For some reason, that maybe mimics the sound of a hawk.
Good
or
to
something.
know.
All right. Well,
This has been the short game.
Well,
That's all we have for this week.
Laura, I was going to do the same joke. Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of the
Thank
short
you for
game.
joining us in Possum.
I think that's a series.
Well,
I think that's a series wrap on the short game.
Yeah.
This was
It's a good 8
going
years.
to be an episode about GB Studio games for the Game Boy, but now it was the Possum episode, and we're done. And good night. I guess we can move on.
Yeah.
Thank you for indulging me in
It's a good story.
in Possum Corner.
I'm glad we had such great Possum Discourse on the show.
Some disturbing content for our listeners.
The possum refused to withdraw is a sentence that's going to be stuck in my head for the rest
also,
of my
literally
life.
scared the shit out of my grandma.
Yeah.
is a choice.
All right. Let's talk about a different game. Laura and I both played a delightful game.
Oh, it was such a delight.
That is maybe the opposite of the hellhole that Shane just led us down, called Mud Warriors. I loved this game, every moment of it. Laura, how about yourself?
Oh, I was sold from the very beginning. If you've ever wanted playground combat treated with the seriousness of Apocalypse Now, this is the game for you. For me, I was sold from the first time my little mud warrior walked across a piece of playground equipment, and they walked across the little bridge, and all the little pieces of the little logs on the bridge moved just like they would on a playground. And then up went a ladder, and the sprite slowed down like it would in a Pokemon game when you go up a really tricky ladder. And I was just like, yes,
Yeah.
give it to me.
So, yeah, this game is based off of a piece of interactive fiction from someone who we've talked about on the show before.
Ryan Veeder. He's pretty well known in interactive fiction circles. He's won IF Comp before. I think the 2011 comp he won with Taco Fiction. And he's just extremely prolific. If you look him up on IFDB, he's just got like dozens and dozens of games. The most recent thing of his that I've played was, I think it was a couple of years ago in IF Comp, he had a game called A Rope of Chalk, which was absolutely great. And it plays pretty highly in the comp, and I loved it. It was like one of my favorite things from that year. And also, I think it won a Zizzy Award that year as well. So like he's a well-known and decorated interactive fiction veteran with a pedigree or whatever you want to call it.
And so this is a Game Boy version of one of his games, which I think is brilliant, and I hope to see more people take interactive fiction and turn them into these little bite-sized games. But kind of what Laura was speaking to is I think this game is wonderful for two reasons. One, its writing and overall sense of tone, and then the love and affection that went into the design of the game from a animation and just overall aesthetic standpoint. So the conceit of the game, it starts super dark. You have two characters that you can't really tell. At least I didn't catch the joke right out of the box. But they're talking about how awful the war has been, how they've lost troops in the East, and it's very dramatic. And then a character enters in, and it's like, they're crazy. They've gone beyond enemy lines. The music, it's Game Boy music, but it's very tense, and they're like, it's an ambush, and the character throws, you can't really tell, at least again, I couldn't tell 100% what it was, though you have an idea, and it hits the character, and they're like, he's crazy. This third grader is out of his mind. And you realize that it's basically, it's an after school program that is like a mud fight that the kids are taking deadly seriously. And that's really the whole joke, is that these, they'll be like, that's Tommy. His parents didn't pick him up from school today. He's lost his mind. And, and it goes from there and spins out in a bunch of different directions. There's a 5th grade girl who is the Oracle who, they go to what was the line? Like the sheer image of womanhood or something like that.
Yeah. So the Oracle is blessed for 2 reasons. One, she lives in one of those, octagon things, like she's in the middle of it hanging upside down, and she's a 5th grader and can hang upside down for so long. Her pigtails are down. And she's also covered the outside in the towels of mud from the fallen children. So she's in this like war hut that she's built, and it next to a stack of clean towels. And I'm like, this is all I want. I want
it's so funny,
deathly serious children's combat.
And my favorite joke of it, besides like the writing, is it's all very tropey war style writing. The conversations the kids are having with each other. I'm here
to throw mud and chew bubble gum, and I just ate my last bubble gum.
Yeah, it's silly and then also very dramatic. But my favorite joke is that there's one square that you can return to where the teacher is just sitting with like a hot cup
the teenager. It's just Mike, the dude who runs the after school program.
Yeah. And you go back to him, and like the music changes totally. And he's like, oh, hey kids, like, hey, it seems like you're having a real good time. I'm just so happy you're all having fun after school. Da, 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 da. And then it goes, and they're like, war is hell. It's really funny, and it's delightful end to end. And then what Laura was talking about at the beginning is that just I understand that this was made on software that emulates Game Boy hardware, but like I can't think of a Game Boy game that looked as good as this game looks. The attention to detail, like Laura was talking about, the way the bridge moves, the way the ropes move, the way everything just sort of reacts is really nice, and it looks really good.
I'm just as surprised that the Game Boy can do stuff like this as I am that a no coding tool set can do stuff like this.
Yeah, this seems really complicated. I played through a little bit of some sample projects, and they were impressive. But I've seen stuff in these games that I'm like, wow, how do you do that with this?
Well, if you think about the normal progression of a console, the games that come out at the beginning are so different from the games that come out at the end. After 10 years of working on a console, you start to figure out how to unlock, more capabilities, utilize the resources that are there even more specifically. And I guess in this case, we're thinking 30 years later, people have really figured out how to maximize the output from a Game Boy game.
Yeah, I think the really fun part about this is, so the combat's pretty simple. There are a series of fights. You know vaguely how tough those folks are going to be. And you have to go collect quarters to bribe Mike to give you stickers, which are considered your power. So it's a very cute little loop, so it's a bunch of exploring. The combat's pretty simple. Once you are stronger, you will win, but the dialogue is very fun in it. So even while you're watching people throw balls, you're like, the bad kid will stick a rock in the clump and he's a tool, that kind of thing. The third grader doesn't call the other kid a tool. I'm calling the kid a tool. Let's be clear. But I found it really, I said I was in from the bridge, but the moment I knew I was in good hands is when you exit your General Shaquille. After you've been talking to General Shaquille and you've gotten your mission, you exit out the back, and then you realize you've taken the slide down.
Yeah,
it's like
nice.
I'm sold.
I just love the writing again is so funny. The teacher will be like, "Oh, isn't it fun that I made the dodgeballs? Whatever team gets both dodgeballs first wins." And then it'll be like, the orb of Zalanthor has been lost for a millennia. We're trying to recover it from General Betsy.
Or you go to the gate that shows the parking lot, and it's like, the doors are closed. You dream of home. Someday you will return there, but not now. Not until the war is done.
Yeah.
Or it's time for your mother to show up and pick you up.
Across, not from the brown pits of despair, where the mud expands across all that we know. There, the grass is green and grows. There, where my home is, it's.
And eventually, you realize it's because there's some kind of resodding project that's happened in the backyard. So
they screwed up. Yeah, they were refinishing the school, and it rained really hard, and now there's mud everywhere. And it's this after school attendant has turned it into a little game, and the kids have taken it way too seriously.
I mean, you talk about short. This thing is maybe 45 minutes.
Yeah, probably 45 minutes to an hour. It's great. It's fun. Like if I had this as a kid on Game Boy, I think I would love it. It's not your classic. Most Game Boy games were like, how can we make this where you're going to want to play it for 100 hours? This is, a pretty tight experience, but and there's really not any. The combat is, like Laura said, it's pre-scripted. If you have a higher star count, you're going to win, or even just a matching star count. But even still, it's fun. The exploration was kind of fun. Finding the quarters was kind of fun, but it's the writing and the design that makes it work so well.
It's fun because when you wander around, you're going to get a joke or an item, so you're fine doing it. It's that kind of payoff. I would not call this an adventure game, but it has that kind of random good writing lottery of every time you touch something, you'll get something funny.
There's 10 total squares that you may explore to at the most. It's pretty small.
Yeah, and they're all called things like No Man's Land or that kind. Under the picnic table. It's excellent stuff.
I also want to specifically shout out the developers. So obviously we know Ryan Veeder, creator of the original game that this is based on. But this is developed by Polyducks and Lance Campbell. And Lance Campbell is a member of our Discord. And thanks, Lance.
I didn't know that. Nice.
I didn't say because I wanted to make sure that you guys, I also really enjoyed this game, but I thought I'd let you guys take it because I didn't want to be the guy who was saying like, hey, I'll play my buddy's game and let that color. I'm glad you guys really enjoyed it because hey Lance, thanks for suggesting we check out your game. It was really good.
It's excellent. I'll also give a shout out to Polyducks just because there was another game by them that I was considering called Sludge and Sorcery, which is a RPG that looked excellent. I just didn't have time to get to it. So
I think Polyducks has other games that are for Game Boy, and I'm not positive if they are made using GB Studio.
This one is, but I just didn't have time.
Oh, okay. I had a hard time telling in a lot of cases because many games do sort of very, proudly advertise made with GB Studio as part of their, their credits, and others, maybe that's not as important to them to put out front, but it's, you can find out if you're curious. So gathering together a list of games to play for this episode was a little tricky. Not all of but if you are looking specifically for GB Studio games, there is a tag for made with GB Studio on itch.io, and pretty much everybody making games with GB Studio publishes them on itch.io because it's free and there's an easy way to export a HTML5 version, so you can get a nicely hosted web page for your game where people can check it out. And so it's really nice that there is a sort of filterable tag for this if you go look for it. So the next one, so one that I was really excited to play, and I did like a lot, but I don't think I was quite as into it as maybe Mud Warriors, was Deadeus by IZMA. Deadeus is another sort of adventure game with a top-down RPG-esque looking visual style kind of thing. It's a horror game, which what I was very intrigued by the idea that there are so many games. If you browse through the GB Studio tag on itch.io, there's so many games that seem to be doing a horror thing, kind of like Possum Country as well. But Deadeus has been out a little longer than some of those. I'm pretty sure it was made with an earlier version of GB Studio. So it's a little more kind of graphically sparse, although it does have some really good creepy imagery that's occasionally, either like full screen images, that kind of thing. But what this game does really, really well is just sort of like a feeling of foreboding and, slow, unnerving, passage of time. I was reminded a lot of things like, so it takes place over a course of 3 days in a small town. And you begin the game by having a nightmare where you hear from a terrifying god that they are returning, and they're going to come back and claim your flesh, and that it will be the end. And so you awake and you go around this little town and talk to some of you're a kid. It has a very sort of Pokemon look to it, I think, to the pixel art. So it has that look of sort of like a top-down view of a small town, and everybody has this sort of little like cute Pokemon pixel art style, from the Game Boy style sprites for everybody. But you go around your little town talking to the other kids, and all of the kids are having distressing nightmares. And all of the adults seem to have something to hide. And so it's basically an adventure game. You're going around collecting items, some of which are important for, uncovering things like keys, or you're trying to find hidden rooms or areas to uncover the secrets of the town. But it is very creepy, surprisingly creepy for a Game Boy game. I thought I didn't think it was. I was never like bolt upright in bed or anything from this. It is still, it's still on a tiny screen. But it has a definite, what I was most reminded of is like, you ever see these like creepy pastas about like a haunted game,
like my uncle who works for Nintendo style.
Yeah. Or like that. My favorite is that really, really old. If you haven't ever seen it, you should Google like the creepy pasta about Godzilla for the NES, where somebody like finds a copy of the Godzilla game for NES at a thrift store or on a garage sale or something, and then has a save file on it from some kid that died or something like that, and then creepy stuff starts showing up in the game. It had that sort of feel to me. I think mainly just because it's a retro game with like a creepy story and some weird imagery, but it still kind of it was unsettling in that kind of way. And it had good music, good sort of creepy music. I will say that I found it a little annoying the way the music looped. This might have been a technical limitation, but it was one of those things where like you'd cross from one screen to another and the music would start the loop anew, and you do that after 3 or 4 hours of playing a game, and you get kind of tired of the music looping in weird, unpleasant ways. But it is just really, really well done. It's a fairly lengthy thing. Not super long. I would say like you can probably play this thing in like 3 hours. It's designed for you to play it multiple times because there are 11 endings. Some of them are like easy to get and kind of trivial. Like if you leave town, which you can do at almost any point, then you get an ending, which is I left town, right? There are, I think, 2 kind of main or most interesting endings, and I didn't get either of them. And I ended up having to look up some of the details about them because both of them are the kind of thing where like you need to know about certain things that it's really hard to discover on day 1 of 3. So I'm still trying to keep things kind of vague. If you want to do certain things involving the cataclysm that happens at the end of the game, you need to prepare in advance in ways that are hard to know how to do unless you've seen the endings already. But once you do know, they're not that hard, so it wouldn't be that hard to go back and do another playthrough. And it does have just sort of like I don't know. The main thing that I'd say about it is like once you do know about those endings, the things that you can do in this game to either try to prevent or bring about the cataclysm that it is building towards are not the sort of things that you would expect to be doing in a Game Boy game, is the main thing I'll say. I found it really surprising and creepy, and I don't know if I need to go into details about spoiler stuff here. I think I'll leave it at that. But I would definitely recommend this one. It's on itch.io. This is another one where you can sort of, download it for free or name your price, but you can, it has a suggested donation of $5. So I say toss this developer his $5. But you can also buy this game on cartridge. A bunch of the games in the episode we're talking about today have had or currently have cartridge releases available. And this is one. You can get it from Incubate Games. That's INCUB number 8. And they have what looks like a really nice professional cartridge version of this. And I think that would be a really fun way to play this game. So give that a try. But yeah, I totally recommend checking out Deadeus. I think it's one of the more well-known GB Studio games. I've seen it talked about on blogs and such in other places. So that was one of the reasons I was looking forward to checking it out. I actually think in many ways, it seems like some of the more recent GB Studio games, like things like Mud Warriors or maybe Possum Country, which I haven't played, maybe improve on it technically, but it definitely nails something about the tone. It's very creepy.
Well, that's really interesting because I also noticed that a lot of these games are horror or horror influenced, and you think of the horror film genre is pretty littered with low budget, lo-fi movies that manage to accomplish the tone and setting and become big hits. So I wonder if there's something to Game Boy at this point. It's as lo-fi as you can get in video games, but horror doesn't really matter or doesn't really care about the medium. It's actually a great place to tell these sort of spooky stories.
Wasn't there I think the other thing that it reminded me of was like, do you remember the rumors that would go around about like Lavender Town and the original Game Boy?
Oh
Pokemon
yeah,
games?
I do. That actual ghosts
Yeah, well, I mean, in the Pokemon world, there are just like ghost Pokemon. So like ghosts are just a thing that's around and you can catch them in a ball. But like they were like, I can't remember the details now, but they were like creepy stories about like what's really going on in Lavender Town or something like that.
Personally,
So
I
think
would like it if we would move on. I'm getting kind of spooked right now from this conversation.
Well, I think the reason I bring it up is like I think maybe some people from our generation are like primed for being open to creepy or unsettling stuff in a Game Boy context specifically. And maybe it has something to do with those sorts of
It was that there was
rumors.
a tone that you could play that would make you lose your mind.
Something like that. That sounds right.
It was
I'm gonna
that
have to Google this
Cubone
later.
was wearing his mother's
Whoa.
Oh, that one too. I do remember that was.
But that is
It
That's
was
real.
that you could move the truck near the SS Annie and get Mew from underneath. No,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah,
Pokemon.
so-
There was a lot of disinformation going around about the original Pokemon cartridge.
Some missing numbers.
You know, it's also a game. Soccer.
Yeah, like vibe check. Let's talk about soccer now.
Yes, yeah. The next game on our list, Laura, take it away.
So I played the least of this game because I tried to kick the ball several times and failed, but I would love to hear Nate and Shane, who apparently figured out the 3 controls, tell me about Penalty Kick 91.
Of all the games that we played, this one felt the most like an actual Game Boy game in that it was kind of inscrutable and I
Lovely, but a bit janky.
yeah, I played it for a little bit and it was like, okay, I get it. It's a penalty kick soccer game where you are either kicking the ball or trying to defend the ball, and there's 2 buttons, or there's move left and right and kick, and it's surprisingly difficult.
I would compare it to like golf video games where you have multiple kind of meters to kind of dial in your shot. And well, I was kind of drawn to this one based solely on the title.
Yeah,
I had played Possum Country, and I was like, "Oh, that was fun. That was kind of RPG-esque. I'll try something that's going to be quick and accessible." And I pulled up the Penalty Kick 91 game, and I mean, it really is just what you see on the label. It is you attempt to make a penalty kick, or you attempt to block a penalty kick.
Yeah,
rinse and repeat.
Blocking.
I failed continuously.
Yeah, I could never win.
No.
I was able to score some penalty kicks, but blocking, as best I can tell, is truly just luck, which is very much early 90s video game-esque. So you control the goalie, and you can basically try to block left,
You just try to
middle,
guess.
or left, center, or right. And if you guess right, you block it, and if you guess wrong, you do not, which... okay. And then on kicking the ball, it shows you an image of the net, and there are 9 spots: top left, top middle, top right, middle center, middle right, middle left, so on and so forth. And there's just a cursor that's rotating quickly across them that you have to press the action button to stop it where you're hoping to kick it to. And then you, like Shane was saying, you get a power meter that starts low and goes high and loops back around, but it's going very fast, and
Just
you
like
have
a
to
real kick.
Yeah, and you have to stop it. The higher you stop it, the harder you kick. And if you stop it at the top, it's a powerful kick. If you also happened to aim it at the direction that they had not selected, I suppose, to block, then you'll score a goal. And it is kind of tricky, mostly luck. I think the one thing that was fun about this game is the little cutscenes that you get, particularly if you kick a ball at full power. You kind of get anime action style things with like a diagonal cross across the screen where you just see a foot with like action movement in the back kicking a ball, but it's all still framed, and then you see like 2 hands with a ball going right past it, and then that's it. First person to 5 points wins. I never won. It was fine. I think they were trying to recreate a lot of these bad games from Game Boy era that you'd be like, oh, penalty kick. That sounds fun. I like soccer. And you like rent it or buy it, maybe even play it. And a half an hour later, you're like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing with this game. And it goes into your sleeve that you, take out on a road trip again and have the exact same experience over and over, trying to figure out. You maybe eventually figure it out, but even when you figure out, you're like, okay, this is glad I spent my like one game I'm getting for Easter this year or whatever it might be on penalty kick.
On penalty kick. But damn it, I'm going to play it because I have it.
Yeah, I think we all had that game in the era of the Game Boy.
Yeah.
I remember one that was basically Pokemon, but instead of Pokemon, it was demons, and you would like fuse them together to make.
Shane, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I still have that game. And it is, what was it called? Revelations Demon Slayer, I think.
Yeah.
That's the Jesus one, yeah.
It's actually part of the Shin Megami Tensei series. It's one of the early ones that got localized, but it was before they started bringing them over under their title. I remember buying that when we first had the Game Boy, and I was like super into Pokemon, and I'd played enough of it that I felt like I wanted. I went into a GameStop, and little kid walked up to the counter and asked some teenager behind the counter like, "What are other RPGs for the Game Boy?" And they sold me Revelation Demon Slayer. No, it's not Revelation. Is it something Revelation Demon something? I may be getting the title wrong, but it was inscrutable, especially buying it used with no manual. Completely inscrutable.
No, I was getting this mixed up with the game about Jesus your grandma bought you.
Oh, yeah. No, that's a different one. That was for the NES, which I never got to play.
For shame.
Yeah, on eBay right now, you can get a new copy of Revelation Demon Slayer for only $1,299.
Jesus Christ!
Oh Jesus!
Reagan, where's your copy?
What my it's right in the box over here. I don't know what it's worth. I think I bought it because the box literally says RPG on the cover. It just says Revelations the Demon Slayer and has a little shield that says RPG and has a picture of people holding swords.
Very loosely, was that an RPG?
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Holy moly, yeah, just the cartridge is going for like $200.
I guess I should go dig it out of my box.
Pandemic plus the pocket release, folks are going mad.
So somebody else here, I don't know, that's a Japanese one. Some of them are not.
Yeah, I don't think it's like ultra valuable or anything. I don't think I'm sitting on a gold mine here, but someday I do plan to go back and play enough of that to like wrap my head around it. Now that I actually quite like the Shin Megami Tensei series, but yeah, it was inscrutable to me as a whatever age I was when I had it. Inscrutable. Well, what's next on our list? I can talk about. Oh no, Laura, you next. What's next on our list?
So I only played cozy games. Everyone else is playing horror games. I went from a game where kids took a game and made it very adult into basically Totoro. So I continued my children's theme. In this one, much like My Neighbor Totoro, An Autumn with You by Leaf Thief. This game takes like you're 5, I think 5 3/4, they say up front. And you've moved into your Nana's house. And isn't that fun? And there's the wilderness. And occasionally you stumble into your parents having like deep conversations. It turns out like you overhear words about like eviction and like your mom is working and she's like, the internet here sucks, but I can't lose this job. Or like you want to go into a room and you hear like loud noises coming in so you don't go in. And there's that kind of stuff going on. But you are a kid and maybe there's a magical spirit in the forest. It's got that kind of a point and click style, but there's no inventory. You just pick up stuff. And then after you've picked up enough stuff, like you can, if you pick up cocoa powder and milk and you go to the stove, you can make hot chocolate. You don't have to be like, make hot chocolate, combine these 3 ingredients. It just kind of auto plays it. And it's really quite sweet. I think a thing that I was happy about with this game is the art is absolutely charming. It is taking like a puffy cloud approach to pixel art where everything is kind of like very jaunty. It's like that kind of Stardew Valley where people have kind of like puffs of hair. It's not very like stiff or anything like that. And I think something I found the most enjoyable about this is that like the puzzles are so light. It's just like, go pick up your mail. Oh, and now you've done something nice. We can unlock your dad's, now you get a reward. Or like pick up this photo and show it to your grandma. Walk across these stones in the garden. It's a pleasant place to hang out. Don't think all you playing horror games could say that about your games.
Yeah, that's an accomplishment on a Game Boy game. Like, I've never thought of a Game Boy game as being something like, oh, this is a pleasant experience, you know?
It's just a chill hang.
Yeah.
It is a chill hang. The house is this like lovely Victoriana feel to it. It feels small but like comforting. It looks like a dollhouse, honestly. And then you can like go fishing.
Kind of cool.
Like you pluck a wildflower.
Game Boy is kind of a comfort console for some people. I feel like having a comfort game there makes a lot of sense.
And there's real stuff happening. I mean, your parents are clearly going through some stuff. There's a reason you're moving in with your grandma in the woods, just like there is in the movie My Neighbor Totoro. But you don't have a full understanding of it because you're playing from a child's perspective. And I really liked how your parents having a heated conversation in another room is a way to like lock a door without locking a door. Like you decide to go play in the woods because you can't go in that direction because your parents are fighting, but it's not a heavy thing. It's just loud noises. Mom told me not to go in there, and you keep going straight. It's that kind of detour. Most games that have this kind of 2-layer play where there's you are a kid and bad things are happening to parents, then would have the parents like die or something.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. Like dad would kill mom. Like that is what happens in games where parents
Opossum would eat mom.
Yeah. This one just says like, parents are going through some stuff. It's okay to play and be in the kids' world. Independent. It doesn't overtake the game. Not that I was like worried per se, but I've played a few games where like you play a cute, adorable kid and then like, I don't know, Edith Finch happens and that cute, adorable kid is no more.
Don't touch that faucet.
I love the water. No. So it was nice to play a game with that kind of balance to it. And just a lovely, lovely art style.
That made me think, talking about like just gentle games on Game Boy. I just remembered that probably the Game Boy game I played the most and one of my favorite series was the Harvest Moon game for Game Boy. I loved that game.
Mm-hmm.
It's I generally think of my time with Game Boy as either Pokemon, Mario, or like inscrutable games that I could never figure out. But Harvest Moon was a nice one.
Yeah. I think I had that one too at some point.
I love the Harvest Moon games.
Yeah, this game is such a vibe that I don't want to talk in detail about it too much because a lot of it's just wandering through the woods, enjoying like the leaf art, trying to catch a glimpse of the forest spirit, that kind of thing.
So I played a game called The Year After. Which is another sort of vibey, kind of cozy game. But it's a little darker. It's not dark exactly, but it's more sort of nostalgic and also a little sad. It's described by the developer as an emotional Game Boy experience about an invisible stranger, a family, and a brutal winter. Walk through time, seasons pass, characters age. It's done in a, very, like a lot of these, it's kind of that top-down perspective, walking around as a tiny little RPG-style sprite. But you're playing as a little guy in black who looks kind of like a ninja. And so you're like, what is his role here? And you're walking around and being ignored by characters who can't see you. You walk through, across some valleys and rivers and through a canyon, and you come across a little house where there's a family. They're building their house. They're getting ready to have a baby. You can observe scenes from their life. As you walk through and you see a scene happening from their life, and you continue walking, you walk on out of that scene, you walk through the countryside a little bit, and suddenly it kind of loops and you're back in that same place again, and you're seeing something different. A little later, you're seeing the next season. It kind of goes by season, and you're seeing the fall, the winter, and so on. And I won't tell much about the ending, but I'll say that it's sort of like a nostalgic story. It's a story about loss. It's a story about family. And the thing that I think is most interesting on this one is that the developer right on the page says this is best played with sound on a Chrome web browser. And the reason that they are pointing you that way, rather than while you can download this as a Game Boy ROM and play it on hardware or in a Game Boy emulator, the reason they're encouraging people to play it in a browser is that they've done something really interesting here, which is that on top of the sort of bare GB Studio export of this as an HTML5 game, they've done some JavaScript hacks to replace the sound with actual MP3 audio. And so it has things like, like a non-Game Boy style soundtrack, like sounds mostly sort of like ambient music, but it is not Game Boy music. It is an actual soundtrack composed for this game. Not that Game Boy music isn't an actual soundtrack, but you get what I mean. It's not Game Boy music. It's like full orchestrated music. And there's like nature sounds and things like that. There's like ambient background sounds that are definitely well beyond the capability of what a Game Boy game could do on its own. And while this is looks sort of like a Game Boy game in terms of it looks just like a regular Game Boy game in terms of its graphics, it has color filters applied to it that are reflecting the like season that you're in. So and it has a look to it that isn't like what you'd get from just like a Game Boy Color game or something. It actually looks sort of like more like a traditional Game Boy game, but with the colors sort of filtered through something that looks a little more organic, like a gel lens or something, but a little more detailed than that too, because it has kind of a texture to it. I would liken it almost to sort of like putting a Game Boy game through a set of seasonal Instagram filters, which is a little reductive, but like you get the idea. It looks cool, and it's not like anything else that I played for this. Like it's kind of like Game Boy Plus. Like if Game Boy had some extra sound hardware and somehow developed some new color drawing capabilities, you'd get this. And I think it's really fascinating to see somebody take this game making tool, Game Boy Studio, and kind of build on top of it with just what according to the page is just sort of JavaScript hacks. Like tying in, like they're able to use JavaScript to like hook into the Game Boy memory and like key off things like changing of color scheme and playing of sound files based on what's going on within the Game Boy game. Really interesting from a technical standpoint. And also just like a nice like half hour ish long emotional, I'd say basically like a walking simulator is the closest thing I could compare this to. And I recommend it. It's the kind of thing that I mean, you could polish this off in a half an hour or maybe 45 minutes. And it's kind of lovely. And also just a really interesting look at like what you could potentially do with this tool. So I think it's worth checking out.
It does seem weird. I feel like it's kind of a bummer that it's like not pure Game Boy, but when I really get down to it, is any of these games truly pure Game Boy?
And then when you really get down to it, does anything matter?
Are we here? Is this a podcast? Is anyone listening?
In this economy?
My perspective on it is that like most people who play these games won't be playing them on a Game Boy. It is very cool that GB Studio can export a game that you can play as a ROM file if you load it onto a flash cart or whatever. But most people who play these games are going to be playing them in a browser. And that's part of like, I liken this a little bit to like tools like Pico 8, where like, yes, it's a quote unquote fantasy console, but really what it's all about is it's a game making tool and a set of interesting constraints to work within. Mm-hmm. And that's really what GB Studio is. And it has the added benefit or bonus of like, yes, it'll actually spit out a real Game Boy ROM for you. And that is doubtless extremely cool. But really, GB Studio is a way to create mostly games for the web. And
in a sense, isn't a Game Boy just a browser?
What?
No, just
you're just trying to derailer in chief, Shane Kelly. I mean, I think it's really interesting. I think people should check this out. And that is all we have for this week. There are doubtless tons more GB Studio games and just general Game Boy homebrew games. There's tons of really good Game Boy homebrew games that are made just more close to the metal and with other tools that we haven't checked out yet. So if you would like to hear us talk about more homebrew, let us know what you think is cool. There's a lot of it out there. And we're planning to do more coverage of homebrew games because they're just sort of an interesting little area that doesn't get enough coverage as just, on its own. For example, there's a great homebrew scene for the NES that I can't wait to dig my teeth into more. Other Game Boy stuff, other systems. So, if you have a favorite homebrew game, let us know. Maybe we'll cover it. If you want to reach out to us, the best way to do that is to go to www.theshortgame.net and use our contact form, or go to twitter.com and find us there @_shortgame, or best of all, go to patreon.com/theshortgame and support the show. Even just $1 a month helps us out. We love our listeners who support us on Patreon, but you also get immediate access to our Discord where we talk about the games that we're playing. We talk about what's coming up on the show. We poll our listeners about what they're interested in hearing about. It's where we talk to people the most and where we talk to each other for the most part about this show. So reach us there. You can find our show on the internet, www.theshortgame.net. I may have already mentioned that. You can find me on Twitter @RayganK. That's RayGank. Laura, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter @LauraJNash.
Shane, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter @8BitShane.
And Nate, where can people find you?
On Twitter @NateSTO.
And on your other cool podcast, Nate, you can plug it.
Oh man, what are the chances? So I have the restart of a show that I used to. If you've listened to the Short Game long enough, you heard me talk about this like 5 years ago. But I've restarted my baseball podcast. It focuses primarily on the St. Louis Cardinals, but we talk way more broadly as well. So if you're interested at all, if there happens to be an overlap here, it's called Talking About Birds. You can find it everywhere you can find podcasts.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of anniversaries, speaking of 5 years ago, 8 years ago, we started this show. Woo! This episode will be coming out right after the 8-year anniversary of the Short Game. How have we been doing this long? It's
amazing that this is our last episode after all the possum talk. I think we've peaked and it's time to just fade out.
Absolutely.
No, you'll never keep us down. I'll never allow it. You'll all podcast with me until the bitter end. Thank you guys once again for hanging out with me on the pod. And listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Short Game. Here it is, the last little sound effect thing that we do at the end of every episode. I hope you still enjoy it and don't find it annoying after 8 years. Here it is.